school, we all have an impact no matter where we are on our lake. So we throw around the word watershed a lot. All of you here are very interested in the Honeoye Lake watersheds. You all know this, but just to kind of do a brief summary, it's the land that drains to the lowest point in the landscape where water collects. And absolutely everyone lives in a watershed. And that also includes groundwater. We sometimes forget about the water below our feet because we can't see it, but groundwater is always moving. So it doesn't stay as groundwater. It quickly becomes surface water and becomes groundwater again. You know, we have the water cycle, it's all connected. So it's important to think about not just protecting our surface waters, but to also think about that water that we can't see. So the land use in our watershed really does determine our water quality in all our streams, our wetlands, our lake, our groundwater. Everything that we do has an impact. So sometimes you hear the word stormwater and it's pretty self-explanatory, right? It's that water from our storms. But the thing is, it's the runoff that occurs over our land, our roads, our parking lots, on all other surfaces during and after rain and when our snow melts in the spring. The problem is, as it runs across these impervious surfaces, think of like a parking lot or a roadway, it can pick up those dirt and pollutants that we really don't want in our waterways, and that can really cause some harmful water quality issues. So maybe it's a poorly maintained construction site. We often don't think of soil as a pollutant, but it really can be. If you're thinking about like a fish and its ecosystem and it really likes clear water, it needs sunlight penetrating through the water so that the aquatic plants can grow. And then you have a big rush of soil and sediment that's entering our waterways and making it very turbid. That could have a huge disruption on that ecosystem. Our storm drains, we may not have one in your front yard, but anytime you see those grates on the side of the street, anywhere in Ontario County, all of that water is going to go right into our waterways. Those storm drains are just designed to keep water off the roads so that we can continue driving, we can continue walking on the sidewalks, and we're not having flooding issues. They don't go to a treatment facility. So whatever it picks up, that water, and runs down that drain, it's going right into a creek. Also, we'll talk about septic systems a little bit today. You know, Honeoye Lake, on your lake properties probably don't have a septic system because we're lucky to have a sewer system, but that also includes upland sewer septic systems. They have a huge impact. So we really want to make sure they're working appropriately. So some really good things is that we have people that want to live in our area. People are building homes, they're buying homes, we're building more properties with parking lots, and we've got roads and sidewalks. Well, the problem is that's a lot of impervious surfaces. So where is that water going to go? Right? Before, maybe it was a farm field or a forest floor, and you have that water running down, it kind of soaks it up like a sponge. And now you have a new housing development with a road, a sidewalk, all those roofs. That's a lot of impervious surfaces, and that water still has to go somewhere. So we want to think about, where is that water going to go? We seem to be getting even more rain than we did in the past. So we have more water to take into account for. So at our office, at Ontario County Soil and Water, a lot of our projects involve green infrastructure. You can see some photos of different projects we've done. On the left is porous pavement. You've probably maybe heard that word before, but it's pavement that actually allows some water to infiltrate through. That's right at FLCC, so you can go over there and drive over that and check it out. It's right next to the rain garden we helped install. This is right below CMAC, so this rain garden's helping to soak up all that water rushing off of CMAC's big hill, kind of soak it up like a sponge. And then we've got sediment traps as well in Honeoye that I'm sure you all have seen. So all of our goals with green infrastructure projects are to decrease our impervious surfaces. We want to slow down stormwater and then allow for infiltration. So we're trying to build a better sponge, right? We're trying to make the environment that we live in a really good sponge so it can soak up all that water in rain and snow events. So I'm sure all of us seen the sediment traps on County Road 36. This is a great example of when water comes through the ditch, it allows it to kind of slow down. exits through two small holes at the bottom, and it kind of sits there until it slowly infiltrates through, and then all of that debris, all that sediment is left behind, and that can be cleaned with a standard ditching bucket from the highway department. So that's a great way of trying to slowly filter water before it gets into our lake and our streams. Another project I'm sure you guys all know about, like the Sandy Bottom Shoreline Stabilization Project that we partnered with. These are just all some examples of things that we've done in the Honeoye watershed. Obviously, the Honeoye Inlet Restoration Project, a huge project that can really have some benefits for our lake. If you want to learn more about some of the projects that we've partnered with in the Honeoye Lake watershed, Dan already kind of talked about the honeoyelakewatershed.org that I'm a part of. And there is a huge page on there with all the projects, and you can click on the map and figure out what projects are going on. And we'll keep these projects happen in the Honeoye Lake watershed. Kind of a cool website to check out. So water doesn't just stop at the end of your lawn or lot. You don't have an invisible fence where the water just stops, right? So we want to make sure that the water that enters your property isn't leaving dirtier than when it arrived. So the first thing you want to think about is your healthy lawn care. So we want to protect our water quality of Honeoye Lake and also your property values. A healthy lawn can filter, purify, and reduce that stormwater runoff. You want to make sure you're not misusing or overusing any fertilizers, any sort of chemicals that could harm our lake, because that can get carried into our surface water and our groundwater. This can really result in some unhealthy conditions for our family, our pets, our neighbors, having more weeds in the lake. But it's really possible and cost effective to manage your lawn without endangering our water quality or creating any health threats. So one of the main things is you think you need fertilizer. First, you want to make sure, do you actually need it? It's important to understand that our plants can only use as much nutrients as they need. So if you put on excess nutrients onto your lawn or your property, the next rainstorm is just going to take all those nutrients away, and it's going to end up in our waterway. So a soil test can determine whether fertilizer is even needed. Cornell University did do a study, and about 1 in 10 lawns actually need fertilizing, which is kind of mind-boggling, right? We know so many people who put fertilizer on at least once a year, and that's just what they do every year. So we want to make sure people understand that you may not even need those nutrients, and you may be wasting your money as well. Now, if you do a soil test, which you can do through the Cornell Soil Lab, there's a couple different ways of doing that, pretty inexpensive. But if you find that there are certain nutrients that you need, try to apply in late May to early June or late August to early September, when your grass and your plants are really going to be able to utilize those nutrients. Try to only use fertilizers with slow release nitrogen, and make sure there is 0 phosphorus. So when you look at a fertilizer bag, the label is always going to be nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, so NPK. Those are always going to be the order. So that middle number should always be 0. We want to make sure there's 0 phosphorus in any fertilizer that you're putting on your lawn. Make sure you're following all the label directions and safety precautions. Just really important to understand that 1 pound of phosphorus in the lake can grow up to 500 pounds of aquatic plants. So that's a lot. So we want to make sure on your property or your neighbors, we're not using excess nutrients that is going to cause even more harm to our waterways. You want to make sure you're checking the weather. So if you're going to apply any fertilizer, any sort of chemical to your property, you want to make sure it's not just going to rain that afternoon or the next day. It's just going to wash off in surface runoff. If you're spreading fertilizer, any sort of chemical, make sure it's not falling onto your sidewalks, your driveways, any of those impervious surfaces where it's just going to wash off in the next rain event. Also, it's important, if you are in the town of Richmond, they actually have a local law prohibiting the application of pesticides and fertilizer within 50 feet of the lake or 50 feet of any tributary into Honeoye Lake. So that's actually a law in place to really prevent people from putting their fertilizer or any sort of chemical too close to the water bodies. So you've got a pest. First, the problem is you want to make sure you identify it, right? Maybe this isn't a pest that you need to get rid of, right? Don't jump to conclusions that this is a huge problem. Decide whether it's a species you can live with. Which one do you need to get rid of? So identifying it is a great way to start. Ontario County Soil and Water might be able to help you. Cornell Cooperative Extension, that's another great resource where they can help you identify what you have. But kind of figuring those problems out early. So go out on your lawn quite regularly, maybe your garden. Just make sure you know what's going on so that you can identify those pests early and be able to use something like manual removal to get rid of them rather than a chemical. Cornell has a whole integrated pest management program. You may have heard of it, IPM. They have a pretty detailed website and a lot of resources so you can find out more ways to deal with a pest versus just broadcasting, spraying chemicals. Make sure you're following the directions if you are going to apply something yourself, but you want to make sure that you're applying it properly. You're protecting yourself, your family, your neighbors, your pets. Are you spraying this on the lawn that all your kids are coming over to play soccer on later? Are your pets laying out in the grass? You want to make sure that you're doing this responsibly so you're not causing any harm. And of course, protecting our waterways, our stormwater. Another thing we often don't think of is how we store our pesticides. So say you've got chemicals in your garage that are really old. Are they leaking? Are they maybe out in your outside shed or behind your barn? You want to make sure you're disposing of things properly, storing it in a cool, dry, locked container so that no one can get into it. We have a lot of hazardous waste events in the county where you can bring those types of chemicals to get disposed of properly. If you're ever looking into how to get rid of something, kind of any type of product really, and you want to know how to dispose of it, Ontario County Recycles.org has a great resource on pretty much everything, how to get rid of something, how to recycle it, things like that. And of course, not all bugs are bad. Some bugs can be really beneficial. So we want to make sure that we're keeping the good guys. Improper use of pesticides really can result in a contamination of our lakes and streams and cause environmental damage. So as you all know, it's just really important you're making sure you're doing the right things. So the next thing I want to talk about is thatch. This may be something you've never had an issue of. You may not know a whole lot about it, but simple enough. It's a layer of decomposing plant tissue made up mostly of stems and roots. This isn't just a pile up of grass clippings. So a thin layer of thatch up to about a half for your soil. But anything thicker than that can increase your disease, insect problems, drought stress, can cause some winter injury. You want to make sure you're dealing with that. And this is just comes right off of what we were just talking about. When it's really a thick thatch layer, that often occurs on lawns that have been heavily fertilized and watered for constant lush growth. So that's kind of too many chemicals on that lawn. Too much watering is actually causing a problem that now you have to deal with. So managing it, you want to make sure you know a little bit about core aeration. So that allows more oxygen, water, and nutrients to reach our root systems because you want to promote that healthy grass growth. So those roots are so important for the health of your lawn. But thatch can be compacted, poorly drained, and acidic soils. That can come from that. Use of too much pesticides can actually reduce or eliminate those microorganisms, right? Those really good bacteria and living organisms in your soil that actually help to break down the thatch. So using less chemicals on your lawn can actually promote those good bacteria. All that, there's millions upon millions of microorganisms in your soil. So you want to make sure you're feeding them and they're loving your healthy lawn. So using too many actually harm those guys. You guys can see this kind of image of kind of those shallow roots and that compacted soil on that lawn is contributing to a thatch issue. So then they had some core aeration, which actually allows air and water to kind of get down there to the roots, promoting deeper root growth, and then you've got healthier soils. So we want to promote a dense, healthy growth on our property. So planting disease-resistant seed is a great start. Making sure you're not cutting grass any less than 3 inches in height. When it's really short, your lawn can dry out very quickly. More sunlight can reach the soil, so it's going to dry out that soil much more quickly. There's multiple reasons why you want to make sure you're not cutting it too short. We want to keep our mower blade sharp, right? When you actually shred your grass blade tips, it invites disease in. So we want to make sure we're regularly sharpening our mower blades. This one you might be excited about is I actually don't recommend raking up your leaves in the fall unless you've got a really heavy, dense layer of leaves. But you can mow over your leaves a few times in the fall, kind of mulch them up into smaller pieces, and that actually is going to provide natural nutrients to your lawn and make it even more beautiful next year. Same for leaving your clippings on the lawn from after you mow your grass. Just leaving them on there is going to be a natural fertilizer. So you really don't need to rake it up unless it's super dense, big clumps. Another thing, and this can go for your garden as well, is watering early in the morning. First of all, watering midday is going to, a lot of it's just going to evaporate in that hot sun. So you're actually wasting water. But when you water in the evening, you're promoting a lot of molds and mildews and different diseases that kind of thrive in those moist, dark, damp conditions. So watering early in the morning is the best way to have your plants take up that water efficiently. Just an example of considering like promoting like a grass seed that you could do is white Dutch clover. So it was actually traditionally included in seed mixtures to feed the grass. So it's like a food for your grass. As it fixes atmospheric nitrogen in the soil. It grows only about 4 inches high, so you're reducing your need to mow. It's durable, soft to walk on. It actually doesn't dog spot, it's not common to dog spot on it, which is pretty great. And it has deep roots, which hold the soil in place. And just it's a great thing to incorporate. And you sometimes have those flowers too that pollinators can benefit from. So moving on to the next topic is just emptying your pools or spas. If you live in the lake, you might not need to have a pool, but emptying your pool and spa responsibly, whether you're anywhere you are in the watershed. So safely draining your pools and spas by eliminating that chlorine before emptying it into a water or even a sanitary sewer. So this can be done chemically, right? There's chemicals that you can add that actually help get rid of the chlorine, or you can just allow that chlorine to evaporate. But you want to make sure you're testing this. Chlorine's great in our pools, so we don't have really gross pools to be swimming in. But when there's too much chlorine, if you are dumping it into your backyard or into a sewer system of some sort, that is just too harsh. There's way too many chemicals for our ecosystem. Rain gardens are a great thing to do on your property. Maybe you've got a spot where a lot of water is draining to, maybe even a wet spot in your yard you want to talk about. We can answer more questions about your rain garden on your property. So just let me know if you have further questions. But what it is, it helps increase infiltration of runoff water from your roof, your driveway, any of your impervious surfaces. So you could direct downspouts to a rain garden. This vegetation is actually going to filter nutrients from the water and kind of help slow down your water and let it infiltrate into the ground slowly. This is kind of an example of what it could look like. You will need to bring in some soil amendments. So you're choosing the right soils that are going to drain properly. You're also selecting native plants that enjoy having wet feet. So we think of like wet feet, like you want to have roots that don't mind standing in a little bit of water for about a day. Using native plants is great for our pollinator species. They also don't require any pesticides or fertilizers to grow. They'll kind of take over and just manage that spot in your lawn. It's a pretty great project to install. So if you want more information, we do have some information on our website as well. But they're beautiful. They promote pollinators. You really want to make sure you're choosing native plants always. They have better root systems than our non-native plants, and they're great for our pollinators. But the biggest thing is they do require less care after establishment. So many of you probably have a pet at home, and we don't like to talk about this, but cleaning up after your pets is actually really important. This is for wherever you live. You want to make sure you're picking it up, because as gross as it may seem, when it rains or when your snow is melting, it kind of helps dissolve some of that pet waste into that surface runoff, and it's just going to go right into our waterways. Animal feces contain about twice the amount of bacteria and pathogens and parasites than human waste, and we really wouldn't want to have human waste entering into our waterways. So it's important that we're not causing any more issues with pet waste. So you really want to pick up after them. There are some chemicals in pet waste that can't be treated in drinking water. So there's some really gross stuff. I don't know why, but we want to make sure we're picking it up with a bag and throwing it away. At my house, we just use like the little dog bag holders, use like a compostable bag and put it in your trash can. That's the best way to get rid of your pet waste. They do make things like dog waste composters and things like that. I don't know what they're like to use, but the biggest thing is you don't want to just pile your pet waste out in the backwoods. We really want to be disposing of it properly. And then moving on to our wastewater system. So as I said, Honeoye is pretty lucky to have a sewer system, but you may have a septic system depending on where you live. So septic tanks should be pumped every 3 to 5 years to remove sludge that's not going to decompose. So our septic systems have a lifespan. Department of Health says if you pump every 3 to 5 years, you're expected a 25 to 30-year lifespan of your septic system. So if you hardly ever pump, you're really increasing the chances that you may have to replace it sooner than 30 years. So that's just a properly maintained and service on-site wastewater system. So we kind of use that word interchangeably: septic system, on-site wastewater system. So kind of on-site wastewater system is more of a broad term. Another thing, you may have always been told to use septic tank additives, but Department of Health really doesn't recommend them. They've never been proven to reduce or eliminate the need for pumping. It also can help break things down that shouldn't be broken down. So by using a septic tank additive may break down some of the sludge and have it enter into our leach field and then to our waterways that shouldn't be being broken down. So we want to make sure what things that need to stay in our septic system to get pumped stay there. Are your cleaning products safe? If you have a septic system and you're using really harsh, highly concentrated chemicals, that can actually help deteriorate that tank. So that can cause issues, and it can also kill the really good bacteria that we need in our septic systems for them to work efficiently and so they're not polluting our lakes. Things like paint. I've heard that even Tide Pods they're just so highly concentrated that when they go to pump your tank, it's just filled with bubbles. It's just too much chemicals into our septic systems. But yeah, paint, if you're doing a lot of projects around your house, paint can actually kill a lot of those chemicals and create a really some conditions in your septic system that you shouldn't have. So in our office, we have a septic system inspection program. We have Tyler, who is in charge of the Canandaigua Lake watershed, and then we have Tad that's in everything outside of the Canandaigua Lake watershed. So if you live in South Bristol and you have a deed transfer, so you're selling your home or you're buying a home, our office, Tad would need to do the system inspection. And this is actually a great opportunity. You know, this is why a lot of the towns require this, because at the moment of a deed transfer, it's a great time to make sure that that septic system is functioning properly. In Richmond, it can be any on-site training network certified inspector or soil and water. Usually that inspector needs to CC our office to make sure that just so we know that there was a report done. In Bristol, it's soil and water or anyone the code officer approves to inspect that system. And then Naples and Canadice do not currently have a program for any septic system inspections. And if you do need to schedule one, we have a whole system on our website at ontswcd.com, and I'll talk about that at the end. But we do have a map, so you can actually put your address in, and it would tell you who needs to inspect your property and what watershed you're in. So our rain barrel program, this is a big program that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, but a rain barrel is a great way to have a healthy lawn and promote healthy lakes. It collects and stores your rainwater from your roof that would otherwise be lost to runoff and diverted to storm drains or streams. It's minimizing the runoff pollutants into our waterways and conserves our treated drinking water. So it actually saves you money as well. It can be used for watering our gardens and lawns, cleaning sidewalks, cleaning outdoor furniture. The list really goes on. So it's a great way to kind of collect that rainwater and put it to a second use. So I'm sure there's lots of surfaces around your home or office or school where you could be collecting rainwater. I have mine on my shed and it is full all the time. So it's just amazing how much water can be collected. Just kind of a little bit of math you could choose to do. So if you think about a roof that's 50 foot by 20 feet, so 1,000 square feet, you can kind of picture that in our heads. And a 1-inch rain event actually generates about 620 gallons of rainwater. So that's a lot of rainwater that you could be reusing and using it when your garden needs water, rather than it rushing off your lawn, potentially picking up chemicals or any pollutants or soil and leaving your property and going into our lake. You could use your rainwater to wash your car, but it is important to think about when you do need a car wash. The best thing you can really do is go to a commercial car wash. They're regulated by the government to make sure all of their wastewater is going into the proper disposal. They reuse a lot of it as well, so it's more efficient. But you want to think about what's on your car, especially in the spring. We've got a lot of salt. Maybe you've got oil or gas or windshield wiper fluid, any kind of dirt and pollutants. And then you wash your car in your driveway and it runs into the street or runs into the ditch in front of your house. That's going into our waterways. So if you do want to wash your car at home, maybe pull your car off into your lawn so it can kind of soak it up like a sponge. Or just go to a commercial car wash and make sure if you are on your driveway that water that's draining off of your car, all that dirty water and soap that we really shouldn't have in our waterways is draining more towards the yard rather than just running into the ditch or stream. And then we talk a little bit about how you can spend your money to make sure it's kind of better for the environment, right? We want to try to buy local. If it's buying local from local farmers, your food. We've got a local food guide, so you can in Ontario County that I can give you the link for. Just tells you about local farmers markets and local farmers that you can purchase things from. It's less waste, less packaging, and less transportation, right? It's always better to buy local, and you're also putting money into your local economy. Is the product you're buying recyclable, or better yet, is it reusable? It's always great to be able to reuse something multiple times. That's even better than recycling it, because we all know that there's so much recycling into our systems and we can't use it all. So we want to make sure that we're spending our money in a way that we're not using too much waste. Same for when you're buying things at the grocery store. Can you buy something in bulk? Like say you've got yogurt and you can buy it in bulk and use less plastic than if you bought individual wrapped yogurt cans. So it's just kind of using less plastic, just a little bit better for the environment. And the same for repurposing. Instead of buying new, can you repurpose something you already have? Look at something online, cool ideas that you can do. Can you purchase it secondhand so you're not using new materials when something could be perfectly good that you could redo, or something from a garage sale that you can use? But the main goal is we want to divert things from our landfills. Casella, that could be closing in a few years. So we want to make sure that we're promoting less things entering our landfills. So if you can compost at home, that's a great way to reduce our waste. Donating unwanted items rather than throwing them away. As long as they can be reused, why not let someone else use them? But yeah, composting is a great way to really, you can get rid of all your paper towels, you can get rid of all of your food waste and then use it on your garden. And I'm sure if you don't have a garden, I'm sure there's a neighbor or someone that would want to be able to use your compost. So great way to reduce our waste. So I talked a little bit about our website. ontswcd.com. There's lots of information on there. We have so many programs that we do with agriculture, with forestry, stormwater, so many different things that you can learn about. So I'm going to open it up now to questions. If anyone has any, feel free to unmute or use the chat feature. I don't know if I can see the chat. Here we go.
Yeah, nothing there yet, Alaina.
Okay. All right, great.
Again, you've done such a great job in providing so much great material there that there's probably no questions.
Thanks.
As a quick comment, I know many of you may know that last year we did sponsor a rain barrel workshop. I think one of the pictures that Alaina had in her presentation was of that workshop held down in Sandy Bottom.
Yep.
So watch some of those sites that I publish on Facebook, and I'll try and look for storm barrel workshops in case you're interested in attending one of those. There's usually a minimal charge for some of the materials that you're going to get, but it's far less than the cost of you actually going and buying your own rain barrel, the education on how to produce it. So that's kind of handy thing to have. We did have one question come in here from Jim Huntington. Alaina, how do you get your soil tested?
So Cornell Soil Health Lab has a service where you can actually just send in a soil sample. It's fairly inexpensive. It depends on what kind of package. You can spend over $100 on a soil test if you wanted it very detailed, which sometimes like a farmer may be interested in. For just, around your yard, it could be $15 to $20. But you can Google the Cornell Soil Health Lab and you can actually print out a form and send in your soil. Cornell Cooperative Extension can help you do kind of like a basic soil test, like with some pH information. They're actually located in the same building as us. We're at 480 North Main Street in Canandaigua. But that's a great way to get your soil tested. And you don't need to do it every year. If you're interested, you could do it maybe every 3 to 5 years just to see what kind of nutrients you may be lacking, or maybe you've got some pH issues in your garden. But that's a great way to do it. I think someone asked about native plants and where to get them. Anytime you go to a nursery or a stand with plants, they should be able to answer your questions there about what's native. It's always great to do a good Google search on what is native to our area, because as we all know, things like Japanese knotweed, that was, we brought that in because people wanted bamboo style things in their backyard and in their garden. And then that's obviously a huge issue now. So yeah, planting native is a great way to help our pollinators. These are things that are going to have deeper roots. You water them less, as well as just promoting native plants in our area to grow rather than invasives. I believe there is I want to say maybe in Springwater, there's a nursery that's all native plants where everything there you can buy. But Googling them, I'd be happy to share with some resources, but just like, if you're looking for perennials, like, your coneflower, your milkweed, your bee balm, there's so many different perennials that can kind of take off in your garden that are really, really natives and great for your environment. So I'd be happy to share some resources in an email. I'll write that down. But yeah, anytime you go to a plant store, they should be able to give you some information and point you in the right direction.
All right, thank you, Alaina.
Anything
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Alaina, thank you very much. That was a great presentation, a lot of information in there. As I've mentioned to everyone, this is being recorded, so we will edit this down to just your presentation, and we'll be posting that out to our members as well as out to the Facebook community in the area.
Great, thanks.